Crystal, how do you skate backwards?
I don't know.
How
With figure
how
skates.
okay, true. Figure skates are like the ones with the really like long blades at the bottom, right? I'm assuming that you can't really like can't do the thing where you
No,
carve the ice.
the figure skates are the ones with the toe picks.
Oh,
And
oh,
they do like backwards crossovers
yeah.
and spins and twirls and jumps.
See, I've been trying to learn how to skate for like 6 years, and all I can do is skate really fast in a straight line, crash into a wall, and try to stop and then fall flat in my face. Um, but you're a little better at skating than I am, or at least you skated at a national level before, right?
That's right, in speed skating. I did start as a figure skater, but I was too much of a tomboy growing up and really liked to skate fast more than I liked to skate pretty.
So ice sports. I'm guessing that you're Canadian.
Very much. Yeah, many generations Albertan.
Many generations Albertan. Okay, so I guess you started in speed skating, or sorry, figure skating first, and then
Yeah.
you went later on into speed skating. I guess what drew you to speed skating first? I promise, dear listener, that this will eventually get to something that's relevant to health tech. But how do you get started in speed skating? Like, it's such an interesting story, and how do you get to be so good at it?
Well, a couple things. I watched it on the Olympics. Again, I was a figure skater and a tomboy, didn't really love it. So when I saw speed skating on the Olympics, I was like, that's what I want to do. And that combined with what I call a bit of a genetic advantage, I had really large leg muscles. So I was just built for the sport of speed skating.
What did you like most about speed skating when you watched the Olympics on TV?
I liked the rhythm of the sport, and I also liked the speed.
The speed.
Ultimately,
Fair enough. I do like to go
I
fast.
liked that you didn't have to wear, you didn't have to put braids in your hair and makeup and wear pretty dresses.
That's fair enough. And correct me if I'm wrong. Speed skating is the skating where you got to skate like around in circles real fast, and there's quite a bit of strategy to it, isn't there?
That's right. Short track, there's a lot of strategy. It's more like roller derby on ice.
Yeah.
And long track is more about personal strategy, rhythm, pacing, competing against yourself in your own times.
And what did you end up doing? Which one or both?
I did I did both. I did short track speed skating, and then I got sick, and the National Training Center for Short Track Speed Skating moved to Montreal. I was in Calgary, and so I decided to transfer to long track, where the National Training Center is still in Calgary.
So you dropped a little segue, I guess, into my next question would be you got sick. And if I read everything online correctly, you got sick when you were training for the 2010 Olympics, correct? Or when you were hoping to train towards that?
Exactly. It was 2005, and I moved to Calgary in 2003, and I was kind of on track for a great career in the sport of speed skating, and kind of at the top of my skating career, went from one of the top skaters in Canada to not walking, and was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and had a very aggressive onset of the disease at a very unusually young age for how severe it was.
Yeah. So I guess that did that just come out of the blue? Was there a particular morning where, like, for example, there are like sensory or motor symptoms that just started, or was it more gradual and something that, crept up on you?
It was pretty sudden. I thought when I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the washroom and walking to the washroom, I thought I just had really beasted myself in the weight room the day before and my muscles were tired and therefore I couldn't walk very well. Turns out it was a lot more serious than that. And I was rushed to the hospital that evening. And then over the course of 3 days, I lost feeling from my chest to my toes. I lost bladder control and started to develop double vision.
That's wild. That like to go from speed skating at such a high level to within such a like short span of time having such severe illness must have been terrifying.
Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah. I guess from that point, like, how did how did you recover? Like, how did you take the steps towards recovery, towards, for example, doing what you loved most, because healing from MS, I mean, there are medications that certainly help, but the journey is never quick.
Yeah, exactly. I was still a teenager at the time, and I say that because up until that point, I hadn't really dealt with a lot of adversity. So when they told me that I would never speed skate again, I genuinely didn't believe them because speed skating was all I knew. And so I took that naive approach to, okay, well, I have this weird, wacky new body. I also have resources on the national team that I can utilize. And the only thing that is on my mind is how do I get back into speed skating? So it's almost like I didn't hear the doctors when they said, you have this degenerative neurological disease with no cure and you'll probably never speed skate again. So I slowly but surely relearned how to walk, relearned how to bike, had a lot of support to help me do that. And then eventually I was able to skate again and raced my first competition about 4 months after I was able to walk again.
How did that first race back feel?
After, well, I everyone in the skating community was excited and, inspired to just see me back considering what I had gone through is,
Yeah,
big news in this small sport of speed skating,
yeah.
and I remember crying myself to sleep that night because my times were so slow compared to before I was sick, and I woke up the next morning and the entire left side of my body just stopped functioning. So that's when I really realized that, "Okay, I'm not this invincible teenager." I know, it's so annoying, and
Oh,
I I really took it maybe more seriously at that point, like, I understood that, okay, I'm not this invincible teenager, I have this serious disease, and just like an athlete takes the mentality of, it's not just a coach, it's not just a nutritionist, it's this holistic program in order to reach optimal performance in sport. I had that natural mentality because I was an athlete to take it to my health. So I took a daily drug injection as recommended by my neurologist, but I also looked at, well, how can I change my diet? Are there herbal medicine opportunities that I could try? Acupuncture, chiro, physio, massage, sports psychology, or and various therapies. It all it was all something that I was really open to and knew that I had to have a more holistic approach if I had a fighting chance to not only get back to healthy, but again, of course, my big goal was to get back into skating again.
mhm. Yeah, I think that certainly it can be really easy to anchor on, okay, let's, take this medication and hope that, this medication can 100% cure the symptoms, but seldom is it as black and white as that. And if I'm hearing you correctly, one of the biggest lessons that you also took out of your, I guess, high performance athlete career was really to
Mhm.
consider all options, see how you can attack a problem from many different angles to get to the solution that you want. And I guess with
Exactly.
that holistic approach, where did that lead you? And how long did it take you to recover to a point where you were able to rethink what kind of life you wanted to lead beyond speed skating?
Yeah. So over the course of the following 4 years, I became a nutritionist, was taking a daily drug injection. I started studying herbal medicine and was essentially a guinea pig for all things both conventional and unconventional healing. And through that journey, honestly, the more I got into some of the more holistic opportunities for my health, the fewer and further between my relapses became. And by 2009, I had gotten back to an elite level in sport and qualified for the trials for the 2010 Olympics. And I went into the pre Olympic season of training, and overnight, I lost vision in my left eye, a fairly common symptom of MS, and got more tests done. And it showed on my MRI results that my disease was continuing to progress quite rapidly. It looked very serious. And I was told that I should be prepared for the potential to be developing progressive MS, which means that I could be in a wheelchair in the next few years and start organizing your life accordingly. Um, that's when I made the decision. I was also told I would never speed skate again, and I'm here making the Olympic trials. And they recommended a much more aggressive drug treatment plan, and to be honest, the drug treatment plan side effects sounded worse than the disease itself, and didn't have a lot of hopeful outcomes because it had no effect on the long-term progression of the disease. So I was quite confident, although everyone else around me, my loved ones, were quite scared of this decision. But I went off my conventional treatment and decided to look more aggressively at a holistic program, utilized both public and private healthcare systems. And I got as many tests and developed a program for myself as best as I could. And 8 months later, I recovered and was able to skate in the trials for the 2010 Olympics. I had just missed the team, but the happy ending to that whole career is that the government of Alberta kind of knew about my story. I was that underdog, the person that was going to make the Olympics with MS, and I was going to be this great story. And when that didn't happen, there was this grant that I received where they sent me to the Olympics in Vancouver so I could at least participate, feel the experience of the Olympics, and end my career on still a high and with my teammates and cheering them on. So it was really cool opportunity to have still gotten to an elite level in sport, despite being told I'd never speed skate again, despite being told that, I was developing progressive MS, and still have a cool experience with the Olympics.
hmm hmm So if I'm hearing that all together, you've kind of taken a holistic standpoint to how you managed your MS. You were able to regain function to the extent that you were able to perform to the level of Olympic trials, and you ended your career in speed skating with your teammates in Vancouver with the 2010 Olympics. I guess with
Yeah.
that chapter of your life wrapped up, how did you feel at that standpoint, and how did you decide what you wanted to do? Because if I'm not incorrect, you're not a full time dietitian now, so you must have
No.
had taken a different path away from that, starting in 2010, or at least maybe even before that.
Yeah, in 2010, I decided to pursue what seemed like even a bigger dream of mine that had been developed over the course of the 5 years of me navigating healthcare systems and understanding that there are some gaps that could be filled. So I started the Branch Out Neurological Foundation, a charity that I became really passionate about building so that we could fill those gaps. And the biggest gap meaning or being that we needed more high quality, scientifically valid research for some of the less conventional approaches to healing neurological disorders, not just MS, but anything that has to do with a neuron. And that was very purposeful because I think when we have a disease like MS, where there are so many question marks as far as what the treatment options are and what even the cause is, I don't think we should just keep studying only MS. We should start looking at the system as a whole and what helps our and furthers our understanding in TBI or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or spinal cord injury could give us that missing piece to the big puzzle of the brain and the nervous system. So I really wanted to keep it broad at the neurological level. And so even gut brain connection and microbiome research would fit into that, and build a charity that funded high quality research to the point where even though it's not conventional, it is undoubtedly some of the highest quality science in universities across the country.
hmm Why did research at that point make sense for you to be the focus of the organization overall? I understand with a lot of the I guess treatments aside from the MS drugs, which had all those side effects, which would have been really difficult to tolerate. Certainly, a lot of research and
Mhm.
clinical trials have been done on them, but was that lack of overwhelming evidence for alternative treatments what drove you to focus on research as the mainstay behind Branch Out, or was it something else?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I started to talk to my neurologist and also I had been collecting data essentially on myself for all of the different things I was doing that was promoting my own health. And I would go on Google, of course, and find out that, I sound like I have this miracle case, but it turns out that I'm one anecdotal case of thousands and thousands of other people with MS and other neurological conditions who've looked at their treatment as more holistic and have been really proactive, CEO of their own health kind of mentality, and have had really great results. And so even in Alberta, I mean, we have some of the highest rates in the world. And when I go to my neurologist, they ask me 5 questions that, are recorded on pen and paper. And here I am full of data that I think could be way more beneficial, especially if you started collecting it from the, thousands of other people in this province alone in Alberta who have MS, considering some of the highest rates in the world are here. So we're so rich with data, but I don't think we're utilizing our technology to be able to actually move the needle and understanding where are the common denominators from all of these people who are showing a lot of success, um, and um, and then actually being able to be confident in the quality of research behind it so that a neurologist could actually prescribe some of this stuff that isn't just the this drug, this drug, or this drug.
Mhm. I think another interesting aspect of Branch Out beyond the work that it does to explore beyond the conventional treatments that are already offered is the fact that um, I'm not sure if this is still the mission, but to focus on tech and non like pharmacological treatments. So, is there a reason why there's that specific tilt? I understand that again, like the medications that you prescribed had this litany of side effects, and maybe that could be why there's a tilt there. But I don't want to read too much into your answer before you answer.
No, I'm glad you asked that question because it gives me an opportunity to say that I am not anti-pharma. I am so grateful for the medical advancements that there are. Um, I think everyone I know can think of a situation that it's either saved their life or, a loved one's life. So I'm a very big promoter of the medical system. However, I do think there's still a gap and there isn't a sustainable funding mechanism like there is for pharma at the research level for some of the less conventional approaches, some of the non-pharma solutions. And then I also think there's a missing opportunity in utilizing the technology that exists. I now work in a high tech field and I go to a conference and you learn about all of the cool tech innovation. And I'm so excited. And it seems like all disease is going to be cured. And then I go back to my neurologist and it honestly feels like I step backwards 100 years. And you realize there's a huge gap in, we say it's not about the innovation of things, but the innovation of ways. How do we actually have all of this technology that already exists in the world and actually integrate it into the system so that people can really benefit from it?
Yeah. Um, I've got so many questions, but the next logical step to take is, so you mentioned that you go to these high tech conferences where there are so many different companies, groups that have done research and are developing different solutions, different health problems, and that stepping back into a neurological clinic can feel like quite literally a huge step back. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess this is all under the umbrella of your work with Thinner Labs. So how did you get involved with that group?
So I was executive director. I think I volunteered for full time for 4 years when I started the Branch Out Foundation, which is why I worked as a nutritionist in a brain health clinic and also worked with elite athletes, including NHL hockey players and CFL football players and MFC fighters. I had a really cool breadth of experience as a nutritionist and also all kind of related to either sport nutrition and or brain nutrition. I also worked as a leadership consultant and learned how human dynamics work and how to lead a team and motivate and work with others and collect what I call unlike minds. Because when you have a vision as big as mine, which is to build a healthier next through Thinner Labs and see a world free from neurological disorders through the Branch Out Foundation. When you have big visions like that, obviously, you can't do it on your own, and you can't do it with just someone other people who think like you. So learning how to um, collect and inspire and facilitate the expertise of others has been like a very cool learning. So I did all of that while building the Branch Out Foundation with my co-founder Graham. And I then transitioned and became a full-time employee of the Branch Out Foundation for a few years. And then, they say there's a 7 to 10 year itch with founders. And I think I started to experience that at around year 8, 9. And I thought, okay, maybe my ideas are getting a bit circular and I need to have some new, fresh perspectives in the organization because I want to grow. And I was feeling a bit stagnant. So I moved onto the board, hired a new operations team. And around that time, it just happened to be this like stars aligning kind of coffee meeting with the founders of Thin Air Labs and James Lockery in particular, who had this vision for Alberta and looking at the opportunity from an economic perspective. He also had recently sold his financial technology company called Wave Financial to H&R Block for over $500 million. So that was very convenient for timing when it comes to having this coffee meeting with him telling me that he loves the health tech space. He sees a lot of opportunity there from an economic perspective. He also loves Canada. He wants to see more of the IP that's coming out of the universities across this country to actually stay in this country and build amazing jobs and lifestyle for people. And he also wants to invest and build great companies that have meaning and real human impact. So when he hired me with a handshake, I only pretended to think about it for like one Mississippi before I was like, absolutely, let's do this. Now it's time for all of that amazing research that I've had firsthand look at through the Branch Out Foundation to commercialize that, get it beyond academia. So we're not just, promoting climbing a academic hierarchy as impact. It's about getting this research out of the labs, building companies with it, collecting more unlike minds to be able to go all the way from ideation to real impact at scale. So I am still on the board for the Branch Out Foundation. And I co-chair the bike tour, which is our biggest fundraising event of the year in Panorama, BC. And then I lead the health sector and am head of experience on the capital team at Thin Air Labs. And never did I ever think I would be a venture capitalist, considering my background is really skating in circles. But here I am today, and I'm so passionate and feeling so privileged to be here.
I, that's a really interesting way to put it. But like, I guess for the person who hasn't been introduced to venture capital, and I guess from someone who might not even have exposure to venture capital from even like a health tech standpoint, from your standpoint as like what many would call perhaps a patient advocate, what is venture
Yeah.
capital? Because I think oftentimes you can equate venture capital, or it can be equated to like California tech, like moguls who like build huge companies, sell it off, and live a life of luxury. But that's not really what it's all about, is it?
Yeah, like for sure there are some parallels, and the show Silicon Valley is very relatable in many ways. I actually want to watch it again. I watched it at the beginning of my job, not really knowing what venture capital was myself, and now I want to watch it again to see how relatable it is. But ultimately, it's uh, like at Thinner Labs, we're raising $100 million fund. So we find high net worths, individuals, we find family offices, wealth management firms, and fund of funds, and institutionals like big banks, BDC, Alberta Economic Corporation, those kinds of institutions. And we go after meetings with them to include them in this fund to raise $100 million. And with that $100 million, we invest in early stage companies. So these are companies that are considered super high risk. And because of that, we not only support them with funding and finance so that they can start growing their company and building from scratch. But we also have another part to our business, which is our startup services, where we surround those founders with the support that they need, either internally within Thin Air Labs, or we do a lot of community advocacy across the country to find out what other resources and unlike minds are there that could help this company have the best chance of success and human impact at scale. So we have 19 companies in our portfolio, meaning we've invested in 19 companies to date. And we also work with those founders and help them with whatever they need in order to be successful.
Mhm. And maybe a spin-off question here is, what do these different companies need to be successful? Because you had mentioned that it's important to take IP that's, for example, sitting there generated by the academic rat race and convert it into something that can help uh, hundreds, thousands, billions of people. What converts, or what do you need, or what do startups need to convert that piece of IP, an idea in someone's head and the demonstration that the idea has legs, into something that can actually become a product? Because I don't think that that's emphasized necessarily enough, and that the hard work there is necessarily understood very much by many.
I love this question because my answer is a little bit unconventional because my background is unconventional. I don't have an MBA. In fact, I don't have a university degree. What I do have is experience being a founder, building something from nothing. And I also have experience being a high level elite athlete. The qualities that it takes to build something from scratch, the qualities that it takes to be an elite level athlete are exactly the qualities it takes to build a company. It takes, once you have that subject matter expertise, people are trying to commercialize cool opportunities coming out of the university. Now it's all about grit, perseverance, confidence, vulnerability, humility. That's the kind of stuff that we look for. And so, again, it goes back to not only the innovation of things, but the innovation of ways. Are they just trying to create a better gadget? Are they just focused on their product and forget to see the bigger picture of how that product fits in the environment around them so that more and more people can benefit from it? Those are the types of things that we look for because that's what we believe will truly build a successful company. And there's so much expertise in this world that whatever you're missing, we're confident that if you do have all of those characteristics as a human, as a founder, you'll be able to access the resources that you need, and you'll always find a way.
Mhm. I guess maybe a question that digs a little deeper into your answer there is, again, with your background as a patient advocate for, I guess, treatments beyond that which were offered to you for MS, how did that, or how does that background affect your, I guess, perception as to which founders would make good candidates for funding versus not? Because conventionally, if you're thinking of a good founder, of course, grit, perseverance, subject matter expertise, a strong team, certainly things that are valuable. But does your background change or add a different lens to that perspective on top of what is, expected?
Yes, it's one word, it's empathy. Having been there myself, it takes one to know one, so you know how to identify, but even more so, you know how to empathize with them. It's not this like scary meeting, hopefully, for the founder when they come and meet with us. It's about let's have a conversation and we understand what you're going through. Let's work together to see what we can do. And if it might be investment from us, maybe it's one of our startup services that could help you, or maybe it's there's nothing Thinner Labs could necessarily do for you right now. But there's a community organization or another investor over here that's a better fit for you. So we have that deep empathy for founders and respect for anyone who's willing to um, start a company from scratch. It inspires us all daily.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair enough. I think, like, as well, it takes a whole bunch of chutzpah to start a company in the health tech space, because there's so many barriers in this space with regard to regulatory, for good reasons, and otherwise. But I guess, given that, why do maybe I'm assuming here, but why do you, and perhaps the founder of Thin Air Labs, or Thin Air Labs overall, why does the group think that health tech offers such a huge economic opportunity if there's so many barriers in the way, and and especially because, like, healthcare dollars are limited, especially in a largely public system like Canada.
It's a good question. We see those kinds of barriers in every industry. It's just it's a different it's a different industry, but similar problems. And even when I hear James Lockery, who was successful in the financial tech world, there's a lot of bureaucracy and barriers and security privacy issues that he's had to overcome in the financial tech world that are actually really transferable to the medical system. So it's really about having that optimistic approach, looking at what can we do, how do we move forward, as opposed to focusing on there's lots of regulatory barriers, there's lots of you know barricades along the way. Like, we're all founders ourselves, so we think like a founder, and so that's how we move forward, is we look forward and we see the possibilities and we go after them. Everything else is just it's a hurdle that we jump over, not a barrier that stops us.
Yeah. It seems like, or networking is particularly important for both fields. But I mean, as
Yeah.
you've been exposed to a broader network of different startups, venture capitalists, etc., what have been your favorite experiences or stories to come out of your time within our labs so far?
Oof, that's a big question. My favorite experiences, honestly, is the founders that approach us and the cool ideas that they bring. Like, you just never know what you're going to get when you have this new meeting with a new founder. And my mind is blown basically every day. And on the other side, so I'm either working with founders, listening to their pitches, understanding their problems, and learning about what they want to do. That's usually like a big vision of themselves. That's inspiring to be around. Either that, or we also get to work with investors because we're raising capital for our fund. And these are usually, highly successful, intelligent people in the world who want to make a difference with their money. And they have cool backgrounds and stories. And they were often founders themselves and have their own, scars and battle wounds that they share and can relate to us with. And so that the conversations are always at such a high level. We never have to really talk about the weather or, where'd you get your sweater from kind of conversations. It's usually it's very in depth and interesting and sometimes philosophical. And uh, I know I'm not answering the question as like one moment, but every day, every week, I basically get to meet either a new or several new investors that are amazing and or founders that are amazing. That's the coolest part of my job.
That's fair enough. And I think, yeah, I totally agree. If I were in your position, I would say the exact same thing. I guess perhaps to rephrase the question, um, in your journey to get, I guess, acclimatized to your job from your background of founding Branch Out and from your background of, as you said, skating in circles, what were, I guess, the most important and notable or inspiring or like perspective changing moments for you as you began to get into the VC world?
That all the time that I wasted having imposter syndrome was time that I could have just kept using to move forward. And I know it's easier said than done, but I was hired for a reason. And if I took my own advice more seriously, especially at the beginning of this job, um, I think I could have learned a little bit quicker, but I wanted to, be confident in my strengths. I just didn't know how they fit in venture capital. Now I have a good understanding, and maybe it took, the couple of years of experience for me to really get there. But if I went backwards in time, I would say, like, stop having imposter syndrome, like work on your confidence and play your strengths, and whatever you don't have, either learn it or find someone who knows it. The end. And I I probably battled imposter syndrome more than I um, want to admit, but I just did on a podcast. So there you go.
Very fair enough. I think imposter syndrome certainly is like it's certainly, I guess, I guess everywhere in every field, no matter where people are. And I think certainly going from, I guess, such a different and unconventional background to the space where you are now, I think it'd be even more reasonable to feel like that overall. But as you've gained confidence, you've gained steam in working with Thinner Labs. What's next for you?
It's it's staying mission driven, and it even actually has to do a lot to do with the imposter syndrome. If I was more focused on just our mission of finding amazing companies, raising capital, I wouldn't have any space for imposter syndrome. So now I feel confident in that belief and mindset, and now I just stay mission driven. So for me, over the next 10 years, I hope that we start to build the biggest venture capital firm in the country. And we have several funds, and maybe even having a health tech specific fund, because although half of our companies in our portfolio to date is in the health sector, we are sector agnostic because we look at all of the different sectors. And I think that's really beneficial at the beginning because there's sector overlap that's really beneficial. However, for new funds, I see an opportunity to have, one of the biggest health tech funds in the country.
Hmm. Hmm. I guess just as a final probing question to that overall, what would the
Mhm.
benefit of having a health specific fund be, either for Thinner Labs or for companies overall that are I guess coming to approach Thinner?
The benefit is that we fill a significant gap that exists in the country right now, and that's access to early stage capital. We have more resources at that Series A level once a company starts to scale. But when they first are starting at that high risk zone, there is few options for funding. And often we see those companies either fail and or move to the States or other places where their risk tolerance is considered higher and there's more funding opportunities at the early stage. So the reason why I see an opportunity for a big health tech fund is that there's more capital at that early stage available, and we can start building more companies in Canada that stay in Canada.
Hmm. That's fair enough. And I guess before we close off, do you have any specific work or any specific, I guess, calls to action that you'd like the listeners to take a listen to or to look at?
Well, thanks for asking. As someone who built a charity, you get good at asking for things, and I have two things for the audience to consider. One is go to the branchoutfoundation.com website, make a donation, get involved. There's the Branch Out Bike Tour, which is our main fundraising event. It's a blast, amazing community, and there are so many opportunities to get involved from that perspective. So on the philanthropic charitable side, Branch Out Foundation, and then on Thinner Lab side, if you're a founder of a company, and although we're focused right now with Fund One in Alberta and the prairies, because that's where we see a gap and a great opportunity for building companies. Come to me if you have a great idea for a company. And then on the flip side, if you're an investor or someone who's interested in getting involved as an LP in our fund, a limited partner in our fund, an investor in our fund, also come to me and I can take you through our pitch deck, introduce you to James Lockery and the rest of the capital team, and look at this opportunity for not only great returns on investment, but also great impact on investment.
Awesome. Okay, and you can check out our podcast at at howitsmed.com or at howitsmed on any podcast catcher that you listen to. Until next time.